Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I've got a special video for you to celebrate Veterans Day. It's Sergeant Fury, numbers 1 to 50. Yes, I'm going to show you the first half of my sort of complete run of Sergeant Fury, which I'll explain in a second. I thought it would be perfectly fitting here on Veterans Day to do a video where we show off some cool war comics, some things, maybe you haven't seen before, and I'm really excited to show this off to everybody. Before I get into it, though, just real quick message. My comic quest, currently live on Kickstarter, ends Monday night, 9 o'clock Eastern. So I'll be doing a live stream on Monday night. You're all welcome to join me. Also, we haven't hit our funding goal yet. We're right down at the wire, so links down below. If you're interested in epic fantasy comics or supporting indie comics, just check it out there, and maybe it'll be something you dig. So just wanted to give you that message. But today, it's all going to be about Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, starting here with issue 1. I promise an explanation of my almost complete run. So here's how it works. Sergeant Fury had some of the strangest sort of publication/numbering going on towards the end of the run of any of the sort of modern titles. There's a lot of weird stuff in the Golden Age, but this gets pretty strange in terms of the numbering. Basically, Sergeant Fury numbers 1 to 80, totally normal, right? But starting with issue 81, which we won't be getting into today because we're only doing the first 50, but starting with issue 81, they started doing reprints in Sergeant Fury. The weird part is every other issue was a reprint. So what you have is the even number issues, 82, 84, 86, are new stories. And the odd number issues, 81, 83, 85, are reprints. So it's very strange. I don't know why they decided to do that. But when I was putting my run together, I wanted basically just to focus on the new stories. So I have all of the new stories. So it's Sergeant Fury numbers 1 to 80. It's all the even number issues from 82 to 110, right? With issue 112, they went back to doing new issues every issue, but only up to issue 120. So 112 to 120, I have all of those. And then with 121, it went to full reprints. They went completely the opposite direction. For the rest of the series, it was all reprints. I think the last issue was 167. I've got 1 or 2 of those, but again, I was focusing on the new stuff. At some point, I may end up filling in the gaps between 80 and 120 because I'm curious about the letter columns. I'm not sure if they have letters in those issues that relate to the new stories. I'm not really sure because I don't have them. So what I have is a complete run of all the new stories without the reprint issues that are weirdly peppered in among the rest of the run. But since today we're looking at issues 1 to 50, that's not really going to come into play because they didn't start doing that until issue 81. So anyway, there's a little bit of information for you about this weird series. But here is my Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, number 1, 1963. Of course, first appearance of Nick Fury and the first appearance of all the other Howling Commandos, or not all of them, but most of them. So we got the first appearance of Izzy and Dino Jr. and a few others, Dum Dum Dugan, Gabe, here in the first issue. Now, there's an apocryphal story here that Stan Lee used to tell. Like a lot of his stories, they're kind of apocryphal. Who knows? But supposedly, he was golfing, because more than one of his stories about the origins of the Marvel Universe have to do with him golfing. But basically, there was a bet. And the bet that he made with Martin Goodman, his uncle, who was the publisher, is that he thought he could take this new Marvel style and apply it to anything. And supposedly they decided to do this war book, and he gave it this really long, clunky name specifically to sort of prove that it didn't matter what the genre was or just how bad the name of the series or the logo was. The stories are going to be so good that it was going to be popular. I don't know if that story's true. There's going to be a couple other Stan stories we're going to get to in this run. I'm not sure those are true either. But it's interesting to note. Now, my copy here advertised as a 3.0. I got it a few years ago off of eBay. That's probably about right. It's got your general wear and tear. Main issues with it are at the top, where we got a little bit of paper loss, corner blunting, and then there's also some staining here that you can see, and just general wear. But I don't have any idea really what this is worth. I paid $310 for it when I bought it. I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago now. And then during the pandemic, of course, we had that huge spike in prices across the board of all the keys, and it went up. And at one point, it was worth like $900 or more. My guess is it's somewhere in between now, $600-700. I don't really know. But it's a really cool book. It's a cool key. This is the second copy of this I've owned. So here's my sad tale, is that when I was a kid in the late 80s, there's this thing called the Brimfield Antique Fair, which is like one of the biggest antique shows in the world. It takes place in Brimfield, Mass. 3 times a year over a week or so. They have like along Route 20, they've got like a mile of flea market, both sides of the road, stretching back like row upon row. So there's like thousands of vendors. And one year I was down there again. I don't know if it was probably 88 is my guess. And I was going through a box there, and there was a Sergeant Fury #1. I paid $20 for it. But at some point I sold it. I don't remember. I traded it. I sold it. I got rid of it. Whatever it was, it just didn't really stick with me. So then when I put this run together, 30 years later, I had to reacquire it and pay quite a bit more. But really great book, really cool, undervalued still, major key, because Nick Fury is still a major character. I wonder about some of the long term with it, because they've worked so hard in the comics to try and make them as much like the movies as possible, that it's no longer this version of Nick Fury in the comics. But still a major early Marvel key. It's not as easy to get maybe as some of the other bigger superhero keys, certainly in grade, which this isn't. But I love these early issues. Kirby and Lee. Kirby on War Books can't be beat, even though these are not as hard hitting as some of the stuff he would do did earlier, but also later with DC. But there's some great covers. I love just the era, the style. I have a particular fondness for word balloons with thick lines around them. We're going to see more in the next issue. There's some big word balloons, and the balloons are different colors. I love that. It's just such a great look and design for these. Issue 2. I mean, if you're at the comic store in 1963 and you see the DC books there, and then it's like the War That Time Forgot or whatever, and then this is next to it. I don't know, dinosaurs are cool, but I've read those stories and they get really tedious. I think I might take a flyer on this. It's just so dynamic. Issue 3, again, I've had multiple copies of this over the years as well. This is a bit of an overlooked, I wouldn't say it's a key, not even a minor key, but it is of interest to early Marvel stuff, because this issue ties Sergeant Fury in with the rest of the Marvel Universe, which happens very, very early on. Because in this issue, issue 3 of the series, Reed Richards shows up. Now, this is coming out in 63, so at this point in real time, it had only been 18 years since the end of the war. So in the original Marvel continuity, Reed Richards was a World War II veteran, as was Ben Grimm, who also shows up in some of these war comics. But in this issue, he's like an OSS agent. And so he's sort of on this mission, and he's the like secret agent intelligence liaison that sends Sergeant Fury and his people out on their missions, on this mission. So that's really cool to get that early Reed Richards appearance. It's very shortly, right around this period where the reverse happens and Nick Fury appears in the modern day. in as a CIA agent in Fantastic Four number 21, which is a precursor to what later on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But they did that very, very early on to tie the war comics in with the broader Marvel universe, and there's a lot. We'll see more of that here. This is a really important issue. It's issue 4. And so the reason this is important is because this issue features the death of one of the Howling Commandos. Yes, this issue features the death of Junior Jumper, one of the original Howling Commandos. It's also the first appearance of Pam Hawley, who we'll talk about later, who's really important. It's got some real war stuff with Lord Haha, who is a real person. So like, there's a lot of stuff going on in this issue. It's a really important early issue. All of these early issues are really underrated of Sergeant Fury. Not to get into the Stan versus Jack sort of thing, because I don't want to do that, but the early issues with Jack are excellent. And then there's a brief period where, which we'll show later, where Stan's writing, but Jack has left the book, and those are not as good. And then Stan leaves the book, and a very young Roy Thomas takes over, and those issues are not good. So there's no question that these early issues that have Jack and Stan working together are definitely the best of the run. Another important issue, issue 5, is the first appearance of Baron Strucker, who, of course, is going to reappear in S.H.I.E.L.D. later on in the modern Marvel universe, in the present day Marvel universe, as an arch enemy, and this is his first appearance. So this is an important sort of key book. Issue 6, The Fangs of the Fox. Now this is also an important book. This has a famous story where there's basically a racist. There's multiple versions of this story, so I don't know if it originally came from a movie, but there's a DC war story that has almost the same premise. But basically, there's this racist guy who doesn't want to be involved with Gabe, because Gabe is black. And at the end, that guy is wounded, and the only person whose blood matches him is Gabe. And so Gabe gives him a blood transfusion to save him, and then we all learn an important lesson about racism. So it's a really cool sort of early statement piece from Stan and Jack. Cover dated March 64, so it would have been coming out right at the end of 63. So really cool. And again, I just love the early Marvel look. Just the look of these. I love this cover number 7. Minimalist background, but I love yellow covers. But like the curving text box is something that Marvel and Atlas did a lot for like 15 years. This is sort of a signature look. The text boxes, the court martial, of the action here, and then you see there's the bombs going off in the background. I just love everything about the design of this. Yes, it's kind of cluttered, but it's a good clutter. It just looks cool, man. It looks cool. It's so different from modern comics that I don't know how a modern audience, like new readers, would feel about it. I mean, I'm an old soul. Even when I was a kid in the 80s, I was always more interested in old stuff. I always wanted the oldest stuff I could get. I loved the older stuff. And so the old designs really appealed to me. Even in the 80s, I loved the stuff from the 50s and 60s and 70s more than what was modern. So I don't know how new people, like new readers, like kids today, would feel, like if this would appeal to anybody. But man, it just ticks all of my boxes. I love it. And I've loved it even when I was a kid. Another important issue, interesting, really interesting thing that Stan did here. And I'm gonna, I don't know, maybe this Jack was involved here too. I don't know, but I'm gonna give it to Stan because he was the editor. One of them had this really interesting idea. So it's Sergeant Fury and His Howling Commandos, number 8, The Death Ray of Dr. Zemo. Now, if you look online and in, price guides or whatever, you may find information saying that the first appearance of Baron Zemo is in Avengers number 6, which is true, but it's also in this issue here because Sergeant Fury number 8 and Avengers number, which has the debut of Dr. Zemo during World War II, and Avengers 6, which has the debut of Baron Zemo, same character 20 years later in 1964 in current Marvel, they came out on the same day. So these two books came out at the same time, debuting the same character in two different time periods. So I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's just one of these early sort of shared universe continuity things that Stan and Jack were innovating that hadn't really been done before in comics, and I absolutely love it. So, first appearance of Baron Zemo here. Issue 9, the world knew that it couldn't be done, but Fury and his Howlers had to do it. Mission, capture Hitler. Spoiler alert, they don't capture Hitler. But it's possible they could have, not just because it's comics, but also because at some point they start really screwing around with the time frame here. There's no time continuity in Sergeant Fury, which makes it a little bit weird to read, because when you're reading through, there's a continuity for the characters, right? So their continuity goes in a linear fashion, issues 1 to 120, in that order. But they're bouncing all over the place time-wise in terms of what was happening in World War II. So as we'll see here with issue 10, we're on issue 10, and they're already switching over to the Pacific Front, going to Okinawa, right? So that's pretty late in the war. We've got the first 9 issues all take place on the Eastern Theater, so you get the sense almost that like the series doesn't start until after D-Day. So like we don't even see what the commandos, what they were doing for the first 3 years of the war, and it just jumps all over the place after that point. But this is also an interesting issue because when they're going to the Pacific to get to Okinawa, there's a submarine that takes them there. And there's a guy who's the submarine captain who is not given a name, but he's a guy with a beard. And he becomes a recurring character. So anytime that there's a ship involved, which there is in several issues, it's always this one ship captain with the guy with the big beard who is ferrying them around and stuff. And later on, it turns out that that's Captain Savage, and he gets his own spin-off series. So this is the first appearance of Captain Savage. It doesn't have his Leatherneck Raiders in it. That doesn't take place till later. But it's an interesting sort of character who sort of just shows up for plot reasons and then becomes sort of a recurring plot character, and then they just spin him off into this whole book. So first appearance there. The crackdown of Captain Flint. Issue 11. 12, really cool cover. Actually reminds me of some of the Sergeant Rock covers of the time, which had the different characters on it. Oh, I missed something important here. Because here in issue 12, you'll see Percy Pinkerton. Let's rewind. So, Percival Pinkerton. We're going to rewind back to issue 8, where I was talking about the death ray of Dr. Zemo. Yes, first appearance of Baron Zemo, but it's also the first appearance everybody's favorite British bumbershoot-wielding paratrooper guy. It's Percival Pinkerton. So Percy Pinkerton is probably my favorite member of the Howling Commandos. I really like Izzy as well, but I really like Percy. He's written as this sort of upper crust British guy, so he's very proper. He always carries an umbrella with him. He wears a tam o' shanter for some reason. And, you get the sense reading it that he's just sort of a caricature of the British, you know, um, posh British officers, right? Even though he's not an officer. Uh, Long time later, decades later, it's revealed that Percy was gay, and Stan Lee said that he actually intended that all along. He couldn't say it in the comics at the time, but he put it in his subtext. I'm not sure I believe that. I think he was just a caricature of the British stuff, and this fact that they decided to make him gay is just almost sort of like leaning into this stereotype of the World War II stereotype of the British sort of posh way of doing things as being more effeminate than the manly Americans. So I'm not sure I buy that. In Sergeant Fury 100, which takes place in the present day of 1972, and at that point, Percy Pinkerton is running a Playboy club. Take that for whatever you think that means. But anyway, my favorite member of the team, and I forgot to mention that he debuted in issue 8. So here we have another sort of minor key with a classic cover. It's Sergeant Fury and His Howling Commandos 13, where Captain America and Bucky show up. So this is something that was like heavily requested in the letter column by the fans. We got a World War II book that's clearly taking place in the Marvel Universe because we've already seen these other crossovers. People were like, where's Captain America? So here's Captain America, and he does not appear again for the rest of the entire series. And I think the feeling was that it tonally was just weird for the book to have superheroes in this gritty war book. So they did it for this one issue to placate the fans. It's a fun enough story, and we get this amazing Kirby cover. But they didn't really do anything else with superhero stuff for the rest of the series. They treated it like a straight war book. I traded a high grade X-Men 95 for this, and it was right when I was getting back into collecting. My collection had been sort of in storage for like 8 or 9 years, or maybe longer. So I hadn't really been collecting. I'd still been reading new comics, but it had been a while. And when I finally got that stuff out of storage, I was really like, I want to get back into collecting. This is around 2009. And what I did is I went through my collection, and I was really strict about what I was going to keep. And X-Men I just lost interest in. So I had quite a nice collection of X-Men. And I went to a convention, and at that point I didn't really care about values and stuff. I wanted to get what I wanted, and so it was like when I went to trade this high grade X-Men 95 for this, the dealer didn't want to do it because he thought he was ripping me off. And so what we eventually agreed was I was going to get this, and then he was also going to give me like another $20 in credit, or 25 or something, and I had bought a bunch of random like $2 back issues. So there's a little pile of stuff in addition to this. I don't regret that trade. The other thing I traded is I had a high grade X-Men 101, which now is worth quite a lot of money. And the copy I had was really nice, except it had quite a bit of tanning on the interior pages, particularly the front page. I don't know why. The cover wasn't tanned. It was just the splash page. But it was super nice. It was probably about a 9, I would say, without the tanning. I traded that for my copy of Tales of Suspense 57. So I'm happy with that trade too. Okay, 14. 15. 15, they would meet this sort of Dutch resistance, and there's this kid who helps them out. He becomes sort of an unofficial mascot member of the team for a little while. He's only in the book for 8 or 9 issues, but he's around in the background as sort of like the camp mascot, starting with this issue. 16, I had some of these issues when I was a kid, and it wasn't just issue 1. I got several of these. These issues were dirt cheap in the 80s, So I probably got them for in the 50-cent bins or something. I got several of these old Kirby issues, and the one I distinctly remember is this 16 with this incredible yellow cover, where we see it's out in the desert. In the desert, a fortress stands. It's out in the desert, and we can see that our heroes have taken an absolute beating from the Nazis, and they're just staggering away, exhausted and defeated. And it's one of Kirby's best. Like, it's just great. Everything about this cover is amazing. 17, for some reason they're in Africa, like in sub-Saharan Africa in this issue. I don't remember too much about this. I have the sense there might be some iffy stereotypes in it, but it's been quite a while since I've read these. 18, another major important issue here, for the series. And I would say if you're going to read Sergeant Fury, issues 1 to 18 are really, there's some really good stuff later, which I'll get to when we get to it. But the major, like if you're a Silver Age person and you're interested in Sergeant Fury, issues 1 to 18 are what you need to read. By this point, Kirby has left the book, so Dick Ayers, I think, takes over right around this point. Kirby's still doing the covers, but issue 18 has this great story, this sort of tragic, classic Stan Lee, tear-jerking pathos like story where, we met Pam Hawley back in issue 4. She's a nurse, and over the course of the run, our super tough guy Nick Fury has been softened by his love for Pam Hawley and their relationship, and so he decides he's going to propose, and he gets a ring, and then he's sent on this mission, and there's a bunch of stuff in this issue where he's on this mission and he loses the engagement ring, and he gets it back and all this stuff, and finally he goes at the end of the issue to propose. And while he was gone on the mission, she was killed in an air raid. So there was a bombing raid in London, and one of the bombs hit the hospital or whatever she was at, and she was killed and buried in the rubble. And it's like a key moment in the series and for the character where his heart's broken, and now he just sort of becomes like this super hardened, it's like a sliding doors moment. So great story, maybe the best issue in the run, but you need the context of everything before it for it to really hit. But just a great issue. 19, I'm going to start going through these faster because I have less to say about some of these. Number 20, now I see the Blitz Squad strikes. I think this is the first appearance of the Blitz Squad, which is Baron Strucker's team that he puts together to counter the Howling Commandos. So he basically gets sort of he goes through the Howling Commandos and what each of the people in them does, and then he recruits someone from the German army that has the same set of skills, and they become like a recurring sort of enemy team, like the Injustice League or something. And I'm pretty sure that's their first appearance. 21. This is Don't Turn Your Back on Bull McGivney. And Bull McGivney is a guy who is another sergeant who leads a team of commandos. And here's their team down here. That's not their team down there. Sorry, that's our team. But it says here, when Fury's Howlers meet McGivney's Maulers. Hoo boy. So McGivney's Maulers are a team just like a squad, just like the Howling Commandos. And they become a recurring thing. So they have this rivalry. But once in a while, they actually team up on really hard missions where both squads are needed. So they're really cool. Most of the time, they fight each other. But it's sort of like, in the broader war, they're on the same side. So over the course of the run, they become kind of really cool recurring characters. 23. 24. Now, this is a great issue. This was actually the issue that convinced me I was just going to get the whole run. Because what happens here is the Howling Commandos get leave, and they're sent back to the U.S. for some R&R. And so they go back to America, and there's all these like cameos from different movie stars and celebrities from the mid-60s and stuff. And part of what happens in this storyline is they find a home for that kid who is their camp mascot. So he leaves the series here in this issue because they find parents to adopt him here in America. But they also uncover there's the Bund, the fifth column, basically Americans who are pro-Nazi and pro-Germany, who are working inside of America to defeat America. And so there's all this like home front intrigue with spies and stuff going on. So I really love everything about this story, and it's a real cool change of pace. You know, the stories can get kind of samey, and so the changing the setting and the type of story like this is really cool. 25, some really cool covers in this run. 26, and this is a Dick Ayers cover. So Kirby's done all the covers up till now. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them. But Dick Ayers, this is a really cool cover. I really like this one. Dum Dum Does It the Hard Way. So this is kind of a spotlight issue on Dum Dum Dugan. I love the almost like Justice League style floating heads. Important issue 27. At last, the origin of Fury's eye patch. So there was this question. During the war, no eye patch. After the war, eye patch. What's particularly confusing, though, is that when he first appears in the current Marvel Universe in Fantastic Four 21, before S.H.I.E.L.D. is created, when he's working for the CIA, he doesn't have an eye patch. So they kind of got stuck here in a situation where they couldn't have him lose his eye during the war because we've already seen him post-war without the eye patch. So why did he end up with an eye patch in between Fantastic Four 21 and Strange Tales 135? Well, they could have told that story in the present day, and it probably would have made more sense. But instead what they do here is Fury gets some damage to his eye, and the doctor's like, you have some damage to your eye. It's going to be degenerative. So it's fine for now, but it's going to slowly get worse, and at some point you're going to lose the eye. And so it basically doesn't affect him at all for the rest of the series. It's just like we see he gets wounded in this issue, and then at some point before Strange Tales 135, 20 years later, he loses his eye. So it doesn't have any effect on anything that happens here. 28. '29. Here we have him fighting Strucker. 30. Incident in Italy. These guys are everywhere. Everywhere. The Pacific, Africa, Italy, Germany, France, everywhere. 31. 32. Speaking of everywhere, I've got something to tell you about these issues, but I'll get to it in a second. 33. The Grandeur that was Greece. They're in Greece now. 34. The origin of the Howler. So this is a flashback story that shows you how they came together, how Nick and Dum Dum first met, and how they recruited the other members. So it's an important issue. 35. Okay, here's one I wanted to tell you about. And it says, in this blockbuster issue, a new Howler joins the ranks. Okay, one of the stranger things that was going on in these issues is the letter columns. There are some truly strange and interesting letter columns here, and one recurring thing that you get throughout the series is a lot of letters that are apologists for the Germans. sounds crazy for that to be a recurring thread in the letter column in 1964 and 65. But there's a lot of letters where people are writing in and basically saying, well, it wasn't all Germans. It was only the Nazis, and not all Germans were Nazis. So you make all the Germans look so bad in the comic. You need to be nicer to the Germans. And I'm kind of like, what? What are you talking about? Particularly now. Like, so now here we are, almost 80 years after the end of the war, and the Germans in World War II and the Nazis in World War II are the number one bad guy in all media still, right? But 20 years after the end of the war, there's all of these apologists saying, oh, you're doing the Germans dirty here by making them look so bad. It's boggling to me that anyone would have that position, but lots of people did. And so what happens in this issue, and there's a little storyline that leads up to it, is it's Erich Koenig is basically he's a member of the German army. I can't remember if he's in the SS or what, but he's basically he's a patriot for Germany, but he hates Hitler and the Nazis. And so he's secretly, and his sister as well, they're secretly working against the Nazis to try and undermine them. And he ends up switching sides. And so in this storyline, he ends up defecting, and then he joins the Howlers. And so he can speak German, and he knows all this stuff about the German army, so he's really useful. But he's basically created to get the fans off their back for portraying the Germans too negatively in a World War II comic. Crazy. All right, 36. 37. Some really cool covers here. I love the perspective on this. You can kind of see the shift in the art style. We're getting more towards the later 60s here. So it's like 66. And the art style is freeing up a little bit. And there's some really good covers. Really cool parachuting cover here. 39. 40. Now they're in France. 41. It says, because he demanded it, Dino Manelli fights again. Dino Manelli is a member of the Howlers who's basically Dean Martin. Like literally, the character is based on Dean Martin. So in issue 24, when I was talking about the celebrities, it's because he's this famous Italian-American crooner. And I didn't even get into this, but the makeup of the team is specifically multi-ethnic. So all of the people out there that are complaining about how woke current Marvel is, the original Howlers team is made up of white guy, which is Nick Fury, right? So he's from New York. He's standard white American. Dum Dum is Irish American. Dino is Italian American. Izzy is Jewish American. And then we've got Reb Ralston, who's Southern. He's from the South. And Gabe, who's black. And then there's also the guy who dies, who's just a blonde guy. They kill him off. And then when they bring in the new members, it's a British guy and a German guy. And so they were very specifically doing a thing where they were taking the different ethnic minorities in the U.S., Irish, Italian, Jewish, black, putting them all on a team together. That was explicitly what they were doing. Anyway, Dino had gotten injured earlier. There was an issue that they had here, and I'm not showing the annuals, but they really screwed up big time with the annuals because they did an annual set in the Korean War that showed all the characters still alive. So after Junior Juniper died in issue 4, like a year later, they put out the annual and they just completely boned themselves because they couldn't kill off any of the characters because in continuity they had already showed that they all survived, and it took a lot of the drama out of the series. And so they did things like this where Dino was wounded, and so he was out of the series for like 8 issues or something while he was recuperating. Later on, there's a storyline that's going to be a little bit after what we're doing here, where Izzy is captured and he's held in a prisoner of war camp. And so he's out of the book for, again, many issues before he is freed. And so they do stuff like that. And they also introduce replacements from the Repple Depple. They have new members of the team that come in to replace the people that are injured or captured or whatever. And those characters often die. But the core characters they can't do anything with. It was a huge, huge mistake. 42? Uh, 43. 44. Here's another flashback issues. Okay, real important. 44. We get some new creative team people coming in here, and the book gets a lot better. So after Stan left, around issue 27, Roy Thomas came in, and he was brand new. And the first couple years of Roy Thomas scripts were just like word vomit. Like so many words, and it was so tedious. It was incredible. They're just not good. And not just on this book. I mean, he took over Avengers with issue 35, I think, or 36. And that series, to me, like, there's some good stuff in it, but it doesn't really hit his stride to issue 50. Sergeant Fury, he never really hits his stride on Sergeant Fury. And he started doing this series a little bit before Avengers, I think. It's pretty rough stuff. But art-wise, issue 44, the art takes a huge, huge leap forward. Dick Ayers is still doing the pencils on most of these issues, but John Severin comes in with the inks, and it makes everything look like John Severin, and John Severin is one of the all-time greats, particularly with the war comics. So we get John Severin coming in here with issue 44, and this is a flashback to their first mission. And then we start getting some really good stories here. Severin's doing these covers now and introducing one of the most startlingly shocking characters of all time, the trigger-happy fighting fanatic known as the War Lover. So this is one of these sort of like replacement guys that comes in and joins the team. And what else is happening here is we got a new writer. So Gary Friedrich is on the book. Now, Gary Friedrich is mostly known for stuff in the 70s with Ghost Rider, and he did Combat Kelly, and he did the Gunslingers. He did a few other things, but he's mostly known for 70s work. But his best work, honestly, is this run as Sergeant Fury. And I should say, I mentioned that Dick Ayers still does a lot of the interiors here. Some of these issues are all Severin. Like this issue 45, it's all Severin. It's not just inks. He's doing the pencils as well, and so they're really great. And Gary Friedrich brings in a whole different mindset to the stories, a much more modern mindset, because there's a lot of sort of, Vietnam's going on here. There's a lot of sort of anti-war sentiment here. And he starts doing these one-off stories where we look at the different psychological effects on different types of people and how the war affects them and how they affect the war. The War Lover here is in issue 45, and then the next issue is called The Medics, and issue 46. And this is what the fans started calling in the letter columns the series, because there was the War Lover, the Medics, and there's several more that he does like that, where he's spotlighting one type of character. There's one called the Deserter later on, and there's several. And these issues start getting really good. The best stuff that Gary Friedrich ever did in comics is these issues. So we get this new creative team coming in. Gary Friedrich with a new vision for how the book should go, and John Severin just killing it on the art, and the book really gets much better, like immediately. 47. 48. Here we are, and they've got the Blitz Squad again. Those are the doppelganger, the German counter team. 49. At last, the Howlers blaze into action in the Pacific. Well, they were in the Pacific in issue 10. But yes, for the most part, they've been not in the Pacific. Mostly in Europe, but as we've seen, they've been a few other places. But here they are in the Pacific, and they stay in the Pacific for a while. So I guess that's one of the changes there. And then issue 50, the invasion begins. And this is, they're still in the Pacific here. So this is, I don't remember, Okinawa, Guadalcanal, something. Issue 50. Now this is a fairly well known, if you're from the time or you studied the time, Marvel did a series of posters that you could get, and this was the Sergeant Fury poster, was this cover here, so issue 50. So, really cool run of comics, underrated, I think, in a lot of ways, a lot of really good stuff, very different from the DC War books. There's a certain formula to them, just as there's a certain formula to the DC books, but for me, they're more readable than the DC books. DC had some really great stories, but they when you read 3 or 4 issues of the DC books in a row, you've got to set them down for a month because they're just too much. But with these, you can, for me anyway, other than the slog or the Roy Thomas issues, you can read several issues in a row. You can binge read them, and they're pretty cool. Particularly the early issues with Kirby and Stanley, and then 1 to 18, and then starting Gary Friedrich around issue 44 when he comes on, and John Severin comes on, and the book really takes off from there. So anyway, that's it. That is issues 1 to 50 of Sergeant Fury. Let me know what you think down below. At some point, I'll do another video with the rest of the run. I've got all the annuals, and then we've got issues 51 to 120 missing the reprints. So I'll do all of those at some point as well. But anyway, happy Veterans Day to everybody who served out there, and I'll see you next time.